After the massively positive response from our Desaita Android stereo video, we just had to do another. This time, we got in the Pumpkin Android 9.0 double-din stereo. And I've got to tell you, the major international manufacturers have some serious worrying to do, guys. Although the two stereos have many similarities, the Pumpkin stereo is much lighter on your wallet than the Desaita, coming in around the $300 range. But with that lower price comes fewer features. Thanks to Pumpkin for partnering with us on this video. We'll put a link below to visit their store and Amazon links. Inside the box, the Pumpkin comes with an optional trim panel, installation guide, user manual, mounting hardware and brackets, 7-inch double-din stereo, and yes, you can remove the Pumpkin sticker, dual USB extension with Bluetooth microphone inputs, wiring harness which features steering wheel control keys, three sets of RCA harnesses, including a camera input harness, RCA AV input harness, and RCA preamp output harness for front, rear, and subwoofer, featuring 2 video outputs, Wi-Fi antenna, external microphone for voice commands and hands-free calling, and a GPS antenna. The rear connections include GPS antenna, wiring harness, Wi-Fi antenna, radio antenna, and a whole slew of inputs for all the included and optional harnesses for the stereo. The 7-inch display has the same resolution as the 10.2-inch Desaita, 1024 by 600. It's not quite HD, but it still looks really great, and the capacitive touchscreen is incredibly responsive and offers pinch to zoom controls, which you don't see very often on double-din stereos. It's great for navigation apps. There's no disc slot, so you can't play back your rollerball DVD, but the USB inputs and micro SD card slot will do just fine for video and music playback. Warning: the Pumpkin stereo does not have Android Auto or MirrorLink built in. You must purchase their USB autoplay dongle in order to get them onto the stereo, nor does it have Apple CarPlay built in. But remember, this is an Android unit, it's basically a tablet. So does that really matter on a stereo that you can literally download any app onto? This Max 5 model features an Octa-Core CPU processor, Android 9.0 operating system, 4 GB of RAM, and 32 GB of internal storage. I love seeing the CPU specs of stereos out in the open. Initial boot time was pretty average, and they say the warm boot time is 1 second, but when I tested it, the warm boot was the same. To use the Pumpkin to its full potential, you need to connect it to a Wi-Fi source. Either use your vehicles if you have Wi-Fi, or simply use your phone as a personal hotspot. The stereo settings control the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity. The home screen has access to 2 menus that lead to a lot of the same sources but with different designs. Downloaded apps go to the one on the bottom. One of my favorite features is you can drag and drop sources into different locations like a smartphone, bringing the apps you use most often to the home screen for easier access. Once connected to Wi-Fi, you can literally do anything you want. Treat it like a tablet or iPad. Google, Google Maps, Gmail, and other apps are already pre-downloaded. Surf the web for whatever you want. Go into the Google Play Store and download any app you want. Again, even video apps like YouTube, Netflix, and Hulu. But be aware, you'll be using your phone's data for all web and app usage with the hotspot connection. The Pumpkin features torque, engine management diagnostic, and tools with the optional dongle. As stated before, the stereo features pre-downloaded Google Maps, but they let you select a preset navigation to use instead. Like Waze or MapQuest, which apparently still exists. Quickly access your maps with the navigation button on the home screen or on the side panel. Mirroring to the screen is easy using its RCA AV inputs with a few adapters. This lets you display any app you want onto the stereo. Audio and video both transfer. Use the Bueller BU HDMI-V in addition to a digital AV adapter for iPhone and the BU CHDMI 6 for Android. We have extensive videos on mirroring. Links are in the bio below, as well as mirroring kits for iPhone and Android. The stereo has a solid radio tuner with 30 stations of preset memory. And this Pumpkin is compatible with DAB+ digital radio with the optional NA7001B box. It also supports DVR function, camera not included. Bluetooth 4.0 provides hands-free calling as well as wireless music streaming from your apps and music libraries. But it doesn't have a Bluetooth music source outside of the Bluetooth calling source. You have to select the music icon. The unit has 2 USB inputs. Both will charge your device, but can't play back music from a phone. The dual USBs work best with a thumb drive with stored files, up to a 64GB drive. For audio, it plays back MP3, WMA, WAV, APE, FLAC, OGG, and AC3 files. And for video, it plays back MP4, RMVB, AVI, VOB, ASF, FLV, and 3GP files. Plus, it can handle HD and 4K video files. Obviously, it's not displaying in 4K or HD, but it still can play them back, which is pretty cool. And also JPEG images. Use 32GB of internal storage for the stereo to download apps and save files to the Pumpkin, like photos, music, and videos. The stereo also features a micro SD card slot, also for video, music, and image playback, up to 64GB cards, plus a slot for GPS data. Set the wallpaper to a preset background and adjust the color of the LED illumination. Other great customizable settings include font size, brightness, and night display. Hold down on the top of the display for fast access to settings and notifications, just like a tablet or on a smartphone. There's a built-in calendar, clock, and calculator. And what good would all of these features be if it didn't sound good? So let's test it out. The Pumpkin had some of the most unique results that we've seen in a car stereo. So much so that we reached out to the manufacturer to make sure things were correct. They indicated that the results were accurate, leaving us surprised. We found that by default, the RCAs have high-pass filters on the front and rear, as well as low-pass filters on the subwoofer output without any means of disabling them. We plotted the frequency response for you, starting with the front RCA preamp outputs and using an HP AA0405B audio analyzer. The front RCAs show a significant roll-off in low frequencies under 100 Hz. The rear RCAs had an identical response. As expected, the subwoofer output showed a completely opposite result. Performance only occurred under 100 Hz. This was really interesting to see, and it seems that Pumpkin has made the decision for you what frequencies each set of RCAs can handle, and with no means of defeating their selection. This could be an issue if you amplify only your speakers and don't intend on using a subwoofer, but being that this is mainly in the subsonic areas, this default setting won't make that big of an impact, or could be exactly what you would have done anyway to avoid blowing those smaller mid-bass drivers. If you are setting up a dedicated sub, then you really don't have much to worry about. Next, we tested distortion. First, the subwoofer. We got low levels of distortion here, but more on an issue we discovered later. The front RCAs and then the rear RCAs. Testing the power of the internal amplifier, single channel driven, 40 Hz, volume 29. We got 7.73 volts on the oscilloscope and 13 watts RMS on the SMD, run at 12.6 volts. 2 channels driven, volume 29, voltage dropped to 7.68 and 12 watts RMS on the SMD meter. Now, for that issue that we discovered when we tested the frequency response THD plus noise, we made those measurements with a 380 millivolt output from our HP AA0405B connected to the audio input on the Pumpkin. Both inputs and output were floating on our HP AA0405B. But for this test, we wanted to see the maximum RCA output voltage and at what THD plus noise levels. The max we could get out of the RCAs was 1.4 volts, but that was at full volume with massive distortion figures of over 12%. We were honestly shocked at the performance of these RCAs. When we lowered the volume to acceptable levels of distortion, we could not exceed volume 22 or 23, and those volumes would only give us about 250 millivolts of RCA output. As we raised the volume, things just got worse. Here, we plotted 4 different volume levels, starting with 22, 23, 24, and 25. Again, although the RCAs are generally clean at volume 22, at that volume, we were only picking up about 262 millivolts from a single RCA with 1% distortion, which is not good, people. To double check our findings, we decided to connect our Phonic PAA3 handheld audio meter directly to the RCAs and to look for harmonics as our distortion meter. And again, it reconfirmed our findings. We decided to test using a USB thumb drive as a triple check, and we had the exact same findings with slightly higher distortion ratings. Ironically, during all of the tests, the subwoofer RCA was the cleanest one, with about 900 millivolts at 1.2% distortion. Again, we were a little surprised by the results. A line driver is absolutely mandatory to use this in a car if using the RCAs to up the output signal and you want to limit the volume to a max of 22 to 23 to keep the signal clean to the line driver. Another option would be to use the speaker level outputs in starter RCAs, but those outputs too suffer from bass roll-off just as the front RCAs do. Let's go over the cons. First, the stereo has a ton of cables and adapters for expandability that connect into the rear of the chassis. This, combined with the full-length chassis, could make installation difficult with fitting everything behind your dash. The audio settings are pretty basic. You get a 10-band EQ plus fader and balance control. That's about it. You cannot play back audio from a smartphone via a USB cable. Your phone will charge, but you have to use Bluetooth for music streaming from a phone, or use a thumb drive, unless you get the Android Auto dongle. The pros to the Pumpkin: you can download any app you want, plus it has a ton of expandability options. And it's not hardware or software limited. Its updates are based off third-party apps and Android firmware, allowing you to truly customize your radio. And who knows, this unit might be routable. Ideally, this Pumpkin is to be used to replace a factory stereo where smartphone features are a must and you intend on using the internal amplifier. The audio output isn't as bad as it may seem. The plot shows -2 dB at 40 Hz. Most 6.5-inch and smaller drivers are basically ineffective at that frequency. Now, how does this compete with a Pioneer stereo, specifically the AVH2500 NEX? The two most obvious things that I noticed: the Pumpkin is faster and has more features. And again, although it doesn't have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay built in, does that really matter when you can just download any app you want from the Google Play Store? The capacitive touchscreen is also much better than the clear resistive touchscreen on the 2500 NEX. It's also a little cheaper. However, the RCA outputs do not exceed 250 millivolts clean. We're also yet to test a Pioneer stereo that doesn't hit the proper specs. I prefer the option of playing music via a USB source and cable from my phone with album artwork. Also, Bluetooth is more refined on the NEX. Let us know if you'd buy a brand of stereo like Pumpkin instead of the usual suspects. Be sure to go to qualitymobilevideo.com to get all of your car audio and video gear with us today. Links for everything in the video bio below. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click that like button, but if you hated it, click the dislike button. Join the conversation below, subscribe to our channel if you're new, and thanks for watching.